Hi, everybody. This is Homeschooling Journeys with Curious Mike. That's me. And my guest today, I'm so pleased, is Mariano Castillo from Weston, Florida. And she's been homeschooling her girls for a couple years now. We're going to hear all about it. And then I'm going to ask her about the education savings account that she's been using to help with her kids' education. So, welcome, Mariana.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Let's back up about 2 years or so, if I understand right. So you have girls that are right now age 7 and 9, and they went through pre-K and grade one. What was their traditional school like from your point of view?
So they started school in 2020. Here we had just moved to Florida, and the youngest one in pre-K was going full time the whole time, like in person. The oldest one started the hybrid version, so on a computer in kindergarten for a few months, and then they opened up the school. And they both did pretty well in school. They liked it. They had friends. Things got better. Their second year in school when life was a little more normal. Not so many restrictions, not so much computer time. But for those 2 years, I've been hearing through the grapevine about homeschooling. I have an older sister in Canada who'd been homeschooling for a while, and I happened to meet a neighbor a few doors down who was homeschooling as well. And I was kind of filling my mind with ideas and started reading books. And I noticed that my kids, or actually our family life, for those 2 years had revolved around the school, was revolving around the school and the school schedule and the unbelievable amount of homework that they were getting to. Um, And so I was waking them up very early in the morning to rush to school to get in time, dragging them here and there. And once they got home, was do your homework, do your reading, do your all that stuff, and then they would go off to our extracurricular activities. So we were constantly, running, rushing. Um, and my youngest one is very curious, and she'd want to do experiments and stuff. And I'd be like, "Oh, not now! You have to do all this tracing homework that your teacher said, or you have to do this." I would feel like I was shutting down their curiosity because we had to complete all this extra busy work type homework for the school. Um, and like I said, our schedules were all around the school schedule, so we couldn't travel when we wanted to. We had to, go to sleep at a certain time. It felt a little bit restrictive. And like I said, I've been reading for a while about it and was curious. My husband and I read a book together. We discussed it, and then at some point, I was like, you know what? Maybe we should give it a try. They're young. They seem to be the easier grades. So I asked my kids if they wanted to do it, actually thinking that my oldest was probably going to be like, I don't know about that, because they both loved school and they loved their classmates and all that stuff. So wasn't sure, but they said yes right away. And I explained it a few times. You know what that means? And so you're not going to be going back to school. Things are going to be a little bit different. And they were willing to try. And so we started the following school year, and we've been doing it now for 2 years. And I keep rechecking every once in a while. Hey, do you want to go back to school? Are you like? And so far, we're still in it. They like it, they enjoy it, and we'll keep going as it works, while it works for everyone in the house.
Yeah, so you're telling one of, I think, the two common homeschool stories, and certainly this kind of lead up of curiosity, the grapevine, as you put it, reading, you chat with your sister, the neighbor, etc. So there's this lead up, and then often there's a parent who notices their kid is not enjoying school, not doing well, not excited to go to school on Monday morning. And then there's another one that's your tribe where you're saying, you know what? They were kind of doing fine. Certainly they did well at you going to school, but you wondered about the trade-offs you were making and whether you could have something different. So because I have probably a good guess of what the wake up and the normal school day looked like when you were in the traditional school, give me a sense of like what what happens now in homeschool? Like, walk me through a morning. I mean, I realize there's a lot of different versions, but what's something that would be typical for you and your two girls?
Okay. So there are, like you said, a lot of different versions depending on the day, depending on the activities we have set out. But typically, I try to have them up and having breakfast by 8 a.m. They'll try to clean up their room, get their beds made, and all that stuff. And then hopefully around 8:30 or 9, we'll sit down and do a little bit of schoolwork. Um, I don't do a lot of like traditional academics with them. Like most of the things that I'm focusing on right now are skill based types of subjects, so math, reading, and writing. Um, that's what we do, and it's mostly math that we do, like sitting down with like an actual curriculum. Reading, we read, they read on their own. I read to them. We read as a family. But it's very kind of, we do have follow a little bit of a curriculum, but it's mostly just them reading whatever they want to read and us discussing it. And then writing, it just happens naturally, opportunities to write, and mostly calligraphy. I figured as they get older, things will get a little more strict in terms of content, but um, yeah, so they do however quickly they can, they will do their schoolwork. Usually we try to do it in less than 2 hours if we can, and then depending on the day, we either go out and play. For instance, on Fridays we have surf skate science, so that's kind of like a whole day thing. So they do that their science project through their science content, I guess, with that program in their sports. And then on the like one of the days, my one of my daughters dances for 4 hours in a homeschool dance academy in the morning. So she does like 9 through 1 dancing. The other one will do piano at that time. So there's different activities that we have to drive out to. Um, and then Thursdays are usually like our social homeschool day. So we try to get our schoolwork done really early, and then they go out into either a park or a playground or some kind of social activity with a big group of homeschoolers. So.
I get it. And do you like big picture for this coming school year? Do you have specific either skill-based or academic objectives for your kids? Or are you just kind of going with the flow of like, as long as you feel day to day, week to week, there's quality work happening, you're kind of going to let the river flow where it goes?
Um, is that the one that I have more like structured or like delineated goals for is math, because I just have a curriculum and just follow it along. Um, but the for the reading, I don't I don't assign specific lists. For instance, for literature, book lists, or anything. And to me, there's no point in just being done with books or checking off. I read it. I read it. I read it. It's the actual reading that's what matters to
Yep.
me. So for them, spending time reading is my goal. So I don't have specific goals in terms of the number of lists or of books that they read or the topic specifically. Um, and then for science, it's what the goal is mostly what's already certificate science. So that program has their own syllabus, and so those are the goals we would have in terms of that content. But for like social studies and that type of stuff, we and like natural sciences like biology, a lot of it is just when we're out, we do like a youth environmental alliance class. So that just kind of happens more organically. The social studies we do, for instance, last semester we were doing, and it happened because they were curious and we just follow that rabbit trail. We're doing Greek mythology. So we spent months studying Greek mythology, and we kind of took a little bit of a break over the summer, but they've been asking to get back into it again. Um, we're starting to learn about the Roman Empire now, but it's again, most of it is just we're reading and they're curious, and we just kind of follow along. I don't have tests for that specifically, and I'm not quizzing them to see if they memorize dates or Roman emperors or any of that. But it's more like story based. We talk about it, we discuss it, and we just let it happen. Hopefully they'll learn a lot of it before we can travel and things make more sense to them.
Love it. So I'm getting the picture here. You're doing a great job of telling the story. Are there any pain points along the way? So, for example, when my wife and I go for a walk, we sort of, we talk about each kid and how we think things are going and just their overall, you know, how they're doing in school, their various activities, things like that, how they're developing socially. Um, I'm curious, like, obviously you're sticking with it. So the implication there is it's going pretty well. You seem pretty happy as you talk about this. So it also probably makes me think it's going pretty well. But I'm curious about any pain points that you've noticed along the way.
What I've been noticing lately, like I guess the biggest challenge for me homeschooling, and I don't know if this is specifically what you were asking about, is the time commitment it requires of me personally. So the sacrifice on my own personal time. Like a friend recently described it as like eternal toddlerhood. So you're kind of like you have your kids around all the time, and as they're getting older, it's getting a little bit easier. I can go to the bathroom or sit down and read a little bit without them constantly bombarding me with requests for attention. But it's when they went to school, I had basically that free daycare for 8 hours where I could work out, work, do grocery shopping, whatever I need to have phone calls, whatever it is I need to do uninterrupted. That was easier. Now it requires a little bit more organization and forethought on my part. I can't just like get up and do whatever I can for 8 hours. I have to make sure that someone's home to watch my kids while I run and do something or have my doctor's appointments or whatever. It just that part is a little bit, I think, is the biggest challenge. Um, in terms of pain points regarding my kids' development or their performance or whatever it is that we're want to describe, it ebbs and flows. There's different. It's not constant. I can't say that like it's the same struggle throughout the whole year. There's some weeks that I'm like, oh my god, this kid is giving me attitude, or she's not wanting to read, or she's complaining constantly about something, and then we'll tweak something, we'll adjust, we'll change the. Sometimes I just need to give them a break and give them a chance to reset, and then we kind of start over, or we do something slightly different and it helps, or then we fix one thing and break another, right? And then this starts working well, then this other issue becomes an issue. Now that wasn't an issue, um but my husband and I discuss it every once in a while, and the concerns, I guess, as a parent, there's always going to be some concern, right? There's always something, whether it's kids, whether we're concerned about their intrinsic motivation, or that they're not waking up early enough, or not getting through as much as we want to get done, or sometimes worry, are they too independent or not independent enough? Do they need more? I don't know if I'm making any sense
No,
for that,
I
but
totally get it.
we,
Yeah. Um, the time cost to you as the homeschool teacher is pretty big. Like you say, it's funny, like with young kids, going to the bathroom is a meaningful moment during the day. And then as they get
right.
more independent, you get 10 minutes free, you get 15 minutes free, you get 20 minutes free. It's a good transition point to ask about these education savings accounts, because one thing it can do, depending on the exact activity, is create a block where another educator is working with your kid. You mentioned dance and so forth. I wondered if you could tell us about this coming year. How do you expect, what are the top three things or services or classes or tutoring, the things that you might use the savings account to buy on behalf of your kids?
Okay. So I mentioned earlier Surfskate Science. They're providers and they're covered by that scholarship or savings account. So that I pay for their Surfskate Science. That's not a drop off program. It's a co op, so we do have to be there. But I think it's totally worth it. It's an amazing program.
It is, and
Uh,
just share quickly. I know the program, but I don't know if everybody listening would. It's a science program run by a husband and wife who do what?
so they have started this great program. They change the specific content of the topic every semester, but basically for a whole semester, 14 weeks, you alternate surfing or skating. And for it's an hour and a half session. The first 45 minutes, it's a like the more the actual lesson part of the content, and they do a lab, and it's very hands on. The skate week, it's in an actual skate park. The surf one is at the beach. So the kids do experiments there. Last year we're learning about anatomy and physiology. This year we're engineering the future. So it's very different type of STEAM lecture, or it's not really a lecture, experiment or session. And then the second half of the class, the other 45 minutes, they actually go and skate or surf with instructors. So they're learning the sport, and they're also doing hands-on experiments with another topic, with another STEAM related content. So yeah, that program is amazing. We've been doing it for a whole year. It's going to be our third session. It's a little bit of a drive sometimes, but the kids love it. They have the same group of kids that they've been seeing for this past year during their class. So class usually gets extended. Once class is over, they stay and keep playing for a little bit longer, and it's it's a fun, great day.
Mariano, how long is the drive?
So the for skate, it's about 20 some minutes, which is not too bad. But for surf, for me, it's about 40, 45 minutes.
Got it. So you've got these, you know, reasonably sized commute, 45 minutes to get to the water. Um, what's a memory you have from this particular program?
One memory.
Yeah, like, the
Uh,
kids are dissecting starfish or whatever they're up to over with surf skate.
um, there's so many. It's hard to pinpoint it down to one. They did a great one. We're doing a lot of marine science and coastal engineering. They were learning about that, and they did a hands-on experiment project and seeing how they could fix the coastlines, or like plant certain like seals and stuff to prevent beach erosion. So it was a very cool, like hands-on little experiments that they were doing to see how the waves could impact erosion more or less depending on what was planted on the seashore, basically. That one was a great one, and they do a lot of. Oh, they had to that semester also like design red light lamps to protect sea turtles when they go out to do during nesting season, to avoid getting them confused with excessive like light pollution. So those that was probably one of my favorite semesters. And they also had one a really fun one last semester when we're doing anatomy and physiology, and they had to like create it was a almost like an edible model of blood cells, and and it was very like messy. My kids love messy type of experiments, but it was slime. There were little beads, and they also had like one with like Oreos and marshmallows that they had to put in to imagine the red blood cells and the white blood cells and how it came along. So it was really
As
cute.
science is supposed to be messy, so it sounds like box
Yeah.
checked on that. And then tell us another one. What's another way that you're spending this education savings account money?
So I mentioned for one of my daughters, she dances every week. So part of the funds go to that. And my other one does piano lessons. So they go to her piano lessons. And another big ticket item for us is their soccer academy. They do competitive soccer, and they train on weeknights. And it's a very expensive program, and the savings account helps pay for that. And there are competitions and all that stuff. So
And so for each kid, do you have about $8,000 or so that you're able to, work with over the course of the year?
yes.
Got it. And so you have these like tremendous services. I'm going to guess the soccer academy has great coaches in the same way that I know Surf Skate Science has these two great
Mhm.
entrepreneurial teachers. And so the experience you're creating for your kids is different from if they went to a typical public school. Usually public schools are broad in what they provide, but not deep. So, like in a science lab, they might do a lab, but they do it outside on the lawn outside the school, right? Oh, let's get some leaves and study the leaves, or some bugs and study the bugs. Or they have a normal gym class, or they have like a soccer team that, like, you know, a dad like me might coach once a week or something. But your kids are getting something very different, it sounds to me. Like they're getting some depth in their experiences. Would you agree, disagree? Feel free to like change what I'm suggesting to be the truth.
No, I agree. They're getting some depth, especially with the. I feel like surf science is a great example of one that's very in depth, and they're also out in nature and exposed. It's an outdoor classroom, which is I think is great in and of itself. Um, the the soccer, they're also getting a lot of in-depth experience. That's not a homeschool program though. The soccer, it's like an after-school program. So a lot of public school and private school kids go to that soccer program, um, which to me it's amazing because it takes up so much of our time in our evenings that I can't even imagine this poor kids. My kids now don't go to bed until like almost 10 p.m. when they have soccer practice. So I'm like, oh my God, and they can wake up late. I can't imagine the kids that have to wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning to go to school after having to practice that late. Um, but yeah, they're able to do a lot of these like extracurricular and physical activity things, and I think in part because our homeschool because we're homeschooling, we're able to be very efficient with our time. So like I said, most of our school, like even like the days that we're actually hitting the books and doing a lot of stuff, we're probably done in 2 hours. um, so they have a lot of time where they can dance, they can do soccer. They also both do jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And my oldest is asking me to, she also wants to sing, she wants to do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, there's only so much time we actually have. But they're able to do a lot more things and more in-depth because we have, well, the funds, one that helps a lot, obviously, and the more time. We're not spending that much time in school. So it gives us more flexibility in that case.
Yeah, I mean, Mariana, it sounds like quite a contrast, right? You're sort of saying, hey, we did it the old way. You got to get up early to get ready for school. Then I got to get you to the school. Then you sit in the school roughly 8 to 2:30, something like that. Then you get home. Then you might have homework that, you don't want to tell your kids skip their homework, but some of the homework might seem kind of dumb. Like, I don't know if you need to be tracing for half an hour, like the kids are little. Wait, what's the value here? And so their days being filled with stuff, and now you have a totally different model. You can sort of adjust the wake up time to fit their lives. So they have a late soccer time. It means we're not getting up at 6:30 a.m. We're getting up at 7:55 to be down in the kitchen at 8, right? We'll have a bowl of cereal and off we go. And you're getting done with the academics in a couple hours. Um, Allowing for pleasure reading, allowing for playing jujitsu, all these outdoors types things, performing arts. I mean, it really sounds like quite a change. The leverage point for all that is you. You're the one who's enabling it. It's that time commitment. Tell us just about your thoughts about that sacrifice. I don't know if there's like, if you weren't homeschooling or before, were you doing other work, or like what's the trade-off just at a very emotional personal level when you're homeschooling your kids?
Similar to your question earlier about the concerns with the kids, and like my trade-off or my emotional trade-off, I feel like ebbs and flows too, depending on the dynamic of the house, at a given time, or how well the kids are doing. When
Yeah.
things are going great, I'm riding the high, feeling awesome. When they're struggling, then it gets. I feel the need for additional daycare more, so someone else to help me out. I need to tap out. But in like I said, in overall, I'm happy. I think it's worth the trade off. It does feel a little draining sometimes. Like I sometimes I wish I could go have brunch and coffee with friends in the middle of the day, or go to just schedule a doctor's appointment whenever I need it without having to coordinate. Okay, who's going to watch my kids? Who's. that part, or go work out, or go back to working. Um, so I do sometimes wish I had a little more flexibility, and maybe I eventually will get considered adding some drop off programs into the schedule. But I feel like the benefits of homeschooling have been so great. The relationships, that part of the bonding, like spending time with the kids, getting to know them better, getting to do all these fun experiments and activities with them. That so far it's been worth it. Like right now, I'm happy with the decision, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity for this savings account and this scholarship, because it's given us the opportunity to do more stuff without having to struggle as much. Like you said, the with homeschooling, there's two things. So one, the time commitment or the emotional and personal investment of the whoever parent or the is the main homeschool provider, but also it's before when we started, it's expensive. It's all out of pocket. We weren't getting anything out. So it's a lot cheaper to send your kid to school. Um, and when you do, when you don't, or before we had the scholarship, it was we're still paying taxes for school and everything, but we weren't getting anything out of it, and we had to pay everything out of pocket. And as parents, we want what's best for our kids, and we want to be able to pay for everything and do all the sign them up for all the fun activities, but it can be cost prohibitive sometimes, So I feel I'm very grateful that we have this option now, and it makes it easier.
Mariana, are there any things that you considered buying with your savings account, just a service here or some kind of product, where I'm curious about the shopping part of this, like how you'd put together, I'm going to buy A, B, and C. I thought about D and E, but decided not to move forward. I don't know if you could give us a couple examples of things you thought about, and then for whatever reason you said either nah or not right now.
So for with the savings account, in my family specifically, we've used it mostly for activities or experience type things, not so much for um, items or objects. We do, and most of the things have been we've used for things that we would have considered doing anyways if we had the money. So I don't feel like we've gone out of our or like, oh, now we have this money, let's see what we can spend it. Like it's usually something that we were considering doing it or wanted to do it, and we've covered. Um, so we do have like there's the math curriculum that I buy. I'm able to get reimbursement for those things. They have a marketplace set up so you can buy it directly through the scholar shop, basically things, and I bought some things through there. One book, their story of the world specifically, and oh, actually, something for the Greek mythology. When we're doing Greek mythology, I bought some books through there too, and it was a little bit of a hassle when I realized like it wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. Shipping took forever, and I started thinking, well, maybe it's better for me to buy these things on my own and request reimbursement than try to buy it directly through the website, because it wasn't very efficient, or things seem to be more expensive through that website where I could buy it either used or um, with free returns if needed through another option.
Got it. That's interesting to me. Just a quick thing. So I want to just double click. You don't think of this as like I imagine I have two types of spending things. Like sometimes, we have this health account through my wife's work where we have to itemize our expenditures for healthcare related that aren't covered by our health
Mhm.
insurance, and then we submit that and then they pay us back and blah blah. There's some kind of tax advantage to doing that. So that's one type where we always have more expenses than we possibly could claim, so we have plenty. But sometimes I get like a gift card and it's like I got to use it up. Even if I wouldn't normally buy such and such, it's like, well, I want to use up the gift card. With the $8,000 accounts for each daughter, do you approach this more like, no, this is like, I'm already paying taxes to the state. I'm going to try to use up this whole amount. Or are you thinking, no, just if I was already going to be doing something like soccer or piano or science academy, then I will try to pull that money out of the savings account. I'm just curious how you process it.
So we use it. So one of the important things to know is that the money that we don't use up at the end of the year rolls over to the next year. So that's an important caveat, because if we don't have that time crunch or that sensation of like, okay, if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. If that were the case, I would probably go into some unnecessary spending towards the end of the year.
Yep.
But since we can roll it over, we've used it mostly to cover things that we think are would increase our homeschool or our experience in some way or another meaningfully. Like, so not just to acquire a bunch of random notebooks or things to just keep hoarding in the house. So things that we feel like there's an actual need for them. Um, and there's some things that we really like that are not covered, and in that case, we use the reimbursement from things that are covered that we would have paid anyway. So does that make sense? So like,
It
okay, I
does.
wanted to do this, I don't know, specific lesson that wouldn't be covered by them, but because I'm getting money reimbursed through the other expenses that are covered, then we're able to spend this money in this other way.
Mariana, did you have money roll over from last school year?
A little bit, not that much, but we did have. So our their jujitsu and soccer take up a big chunk of their expenses.
See, but I love that like our kids one still does karate, and we've gotten so much out of the martial art experience, character building, not just, if you will, the athletic part. And, like for most families, that's entirely out of pocket. But it's interesting because traditional schools, they can't provide every different activity. And so if you go to a typical school, there's very large numbers of kids that aren't involved in any sport. And one of the nice things about the education savings account is, hey, your kid's into jujitsu. Maybe a school wouldn't provide that, but your kid can do that. Another family, their kid's doing rock climbing, or they're doing a particular type of dance that's very specialized, but it's the only type of dance their kid will do and that a school would never offer. It's the specialization that allows some kind of neat opportunities for kids who probably in a traditional school would bounce off of a lot of the, sort of regular offerings. Like, well, I don't want to do softball and I don't want to do track, so I guess I won't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, case in point, I have my niece and nephew and some other friends that are doing School of Rock, so music lessons. But through School of Rock, they're also able to get reimbursed for those classes. So it's very specific niche type of music interest. But they're able to do their music lessons without having to go to the traditional band at school or classical music, piano type lessons. It can be more in tune with the kid's specific interest.
Yeah, that's funny little detail there because I remember our daughter did a 1 week School of Rock thing. And one thing that School of Rock, I think of Jack Black in the movie, but that they do really well is they very quickly get to building towards a performance at the end of the week. The idea of like, no, 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 we don't
Right.
do a year and then you do the concert for the parents. We do a week. And then you kind of force feed the experience. But what it does is it creates like more memorable things. And they've done a lot of interesting trial and error to find, what works, at least in their context. And it was pretty interesting. And then I think for a while our kid wasn't that interested, but more recently with her uncles has picked up guitar again, and it's all part of the journey. One of the nice things about these education savings accounts is you can try things and stop if your kid's not really into it. I wondered if you had had any examples like that where you managed to try something along the way and then it was like, yeah, the kids aren't that into it, we'll just put that on pause for now.
Well, not specifically for this school year, but a few years ago, I remember my oldest daughter wanted to try ballet dancing, and I I had both kids do the trial because why not? The youngest one came out after the trial. She was like, "It was nice. I'm not interested. I don't want to do it." The the oldest one said she wanted to do it, and after like 2 weeks, she was like, "No, I don't like it." So I ended up taking her out after she completed that first month. And a few years later, she said that she wanted to try again. And I was a little hesitant because I was like, "We'd already tried this once, and you didn't like it." Um, Later, did she tell me that it was the teacher that she didn't like? When she was 5 years old, the teacher was too strict, for her. So she tried this new academy. She loves it, and she's doing like 4 different types of dance within the same academy. So what's one of the things that I learned in my experience with public school and now homeschooling kind of reinforces it is that when the kid's ready. When they're ready to learn something, when they want to do it, it'll happen naturally. We can try to force a kid into specific activities or specific topics before they're interested or curious or willing to do it, and it's just going to be a lot of head butting and arguing. But once they're ready to, or they're curious about it, and they ask the questions and they're ready for the answers, when they want to try it on their own, then it's easy. It's
Totally. I think, as a former school administrator, one of the secret sauces of homeschooling is what you just said, Mariana, which is logistically, a school can't index every single kid and find the optimal moment at which to create the on ramp when they're ready to try something. And everybody knows it's way easier to get the kid into something when the kid raises their hand and says, "I'm interested." And here you are as a
right.
mom, and you're able to say, "Hey, I feel the moment is right to go into, dance again." And because my kid is kind of saying she's ready, and boom, now we're really having this great experience, and all these flowers bloom because of that. Whereas it's just
Mhm.
hard as a school administrator. It's like, how do I try to time every kid's moment of interest with their opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Mariana, listen, you've been great. I've taken a little more than your 30 minutes. This is Mariano Castillo's homeschooling journey. I'm curious, Mike. We've finished another episode, heard about two kids living the dream and learning with mom in Florida. Mariana, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your stories.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thanks for having me.